All right, so as we talked about just a minute ago, financial help, more specifically, housing. Give you guys some advice. First of all, let me introduce myself. My name is Russ. I'm on the board of directors of Covenant, and I also own a real estate and property management company here in town and in Las Vegas, Nevada, and Northern California and Sacramento. So, Randy asked me to talk to you guys today about housing and kind of give you guys some tips. So what I decided to do is I kind of prepared 10 tips to help you be better prepared and be more successful when you are looking for housing, when you're submitting applications for rental properties and that type of stuff. So we'll start with that, and then we'll talk a little bit about our credit history, our credit report, and some good ideas to help you guys maybe have that picture look a little better also. Okay, so the tip number one is when you're making an application for rental, be prepared. Bring all your paperwork. You know, it will vary from one company to the next or from one landlord to another of what's required of you when you're making a rental application. So the first thing you need to do is when they give you the rental application, complete it. Complete everything. Don't leave any blanks. If there's something that you don't know, find out. If there's information that doesn't apply, write, this doesn't apply. Don't leave blanks, because that just makes it look like it's an incomplete application, and they're probably going to, discard it or not give it much credence. So first of all, complete the application completely. Secondly, depending upon the company, they're going to ask you for documentation. They're going to ask you for a copy of your driver's license, maybe your social security card, pay stubs, that type of stuff. Whatever they ask you for, don't turn in the application without it. Always include everything that they ask for and submit a completed application. So that's tip number one. Number two is to, once they do provide you with a lease for your approval and for your signature. Oh, good call. Thank you. Just in case anybody wants to take notes, there's some paper and pen. Carefully review all the conditions. I mean, when you sign your name on that rental agreement, I mean, you're promising that you're going to abide by everything that's on there. So you need to really review all the conditions before you sign on the dotted line. It may have things in there that you're not okay with, whatever they might be. There might be things that you would find unacceptable. Restrictions on guests, for example. You can't have anybody stay there for more than 2 nights at a time, when maybe regularly you have a family member that comes in from out of town and stays with you for a week or two. Pets. I don't know if some of you might be dog lovers or cat lovers. You got to make sure that the arrangement that you're entering into is one that's going to allow you to have pets. Design alterations. Some of you might want to make the place your own. Some apartments and some rental units won't allow you to do anything. You can't put a picture on the wall. You can't put up draperies. You can't do anything. So those are the kind of things you want to be careful about. Some of you might run a home business. You might have an online business or do something, to make some extra money. Some of those rental agreements will say that you can't run a home business from that location. So there's just a few examples. So before you sign anything, review it, read through it. If you have questions, ask questions. That's the biggest thing. Don't think, oh, I can't ask that. Don't be embarrassed to ask a question. You need to before you sign anything. The third tip is to get everything in writing. If you're meeting with your landlord or your prospective landlord and you ask him questions and he answers them, and it might deal with your tenancy or might deal with something that's really important to you, make sure that when you get that lease agreement, that whatever it was that you guys talked about is in there. Make sure you get everything in writing. That way you're not going to have any misunderstandings, you're not going to have any disputes with the landlord. If everything's in writing, you keep copies of it. If you ever are going to communicate with him, make that in writing too. You know, get an email address, send an email rather than a telephone call. Because when he responds to you, then you have it in writing, and you have his response to you in writing. So if anything does come up, if there is a dispute or anything, you've got it already. You know, an example of that would be if you ask the landlord to make repairs, put your request in writing, email it to them, or write it out and take it in. Keep a copy of what you've given them. Keep a copy and know what date it was that you asked for a repair and that type stuff. Because of course they're probably going to agree, but if they agree orally, you know, if like your landlord's in your house and you say, hey, you know what, there was something out in the backyard that I was hoping you'd take care of, and if he says, oh yeah, I'll take care of that, send him an email. Send him an email confirming that he said he was going to take care of that. And that way he responds to you, and again, then you have it in writing, you know. So I know it's a lot to think about, but it's all just to protect, you know, it's just to protect yourself and protect your tenancy and protect your rights. And that, which leads us to the next thing, tip number 4, is to protect your privacy rights. Next to, in tenant-landlord disputes, next to disputes over rent or security deposits, one of the most common and the most emotion-filled misunderstandings arise between the landlord's right to enter the rental unit or your right as a tenant to be left alone. That stuff, again, is spelled out in that rental agreement, and if it's not, you need to make sure it is. You've got to understand your privacy rights. You've got to know what kind of notice that landlord needs to give you before he can, you know, put that key in the lock and walk into your place. Most of it is most of them standard is 24 hours. They have to give you a 24-hour notice. But then that is something that should be stipulated in that rental agreement before you sign it. So you should know already. Yeah, they usually have to give you a 24-hour notice before they can, you know, enter your residence, your apartment, or your home. You need to understand those privacy rights, and it just makes it easier for you, and it's easier to protect them, because if you have that documented and you know what your rights are, and if he says, hey, I'm gonna be there this afternoon, and you say, well, my lease agreement says I need a 24-hour notice, so let's make it tomorrow afternoon. He's going to make note of that, and he's going to know, oh, okay, this is the person that knows what they're talking about, you know, and less likely for that landlord to try and run over you on anything else, or, you know, think that he can get over on you, you know, about anything else too. So tip number 5 is to demand repairs. Again, from that rental agreement, know your rights. You know, you have a right to live in a habitable unit. Habitable means you can be an inhabitant of it, means that you can live in it. So you have that right, and don't give it up. A lot of landlords are required to offer, you know, they have to offer you a livable premises with adequate weatherproofing, water, heat, electricity, clean and sanitary, you know, and all that stuff. But if your unit isn't kept in good repair, then you've got some options, ranging from withholding a portion of your rent to paying for repairs and deducting them from the cost of your rent. Calling a building inspector, you know, if the county is involved in any way, you know, calling a building inspector and having them come and taking a look at it, or you move out. And that's, that's the bottom line. And it goes back to getting everything in writing. If you get all those requests in writing and then he doesn't, the landlord doesn't take care of the problems or doesn't give you a habitable unit, then you're right. You have that right to not pay your rent and to move out. Very, very few rights that you have to not pay your rent, but having a habitable unit is one of those. Now that doesn't mean that if your kitchen sink leaks that you cannot pay your rent. It has to be something. It has to be the electricity's not working, the air conditioning's not working, there's no water. It has to be a pretty major thing for you to take advantage of that portion of your lease. But you have the right to live in a unit that has all those things, electricity and water and all that, and he has the responsibility to you as a tenant to provide you that. So that's that one. Number 6 is to communicate. Talk to your landlord. Keep that line of communication open. And that doesn't necessarily, when I say talk to your landlord, that doesn't necessarily mean just talk to your landlord. That means communicate with your landlord. Again, a good way to do it is through email. That way you always have a record of that communication. If there's a problem, this just happened to me the past 3 weeks. Some folks had rented a house, paid their rent right on time every month. The 1st of May rolled around. I didn't hear from them. Called them, left them messages, went by, put notes on their door, nothing. Finally, I sent them a 3-day notice to pay her quick because they hadn't paid their rent. And then they call me, oh, well, and my husband's, disability check got switched around, the dates, and my son was out of work. And I just said, you know what, call me, let me know. Don't let me go for 3 weeks wondering why you haven't paid your rent, So I met them today, they paid their rent, we're all good, but all they needed to do was call me and let me know, instead of me having to worry about whether I was gonna, have to start eviction proceedings, because I had not heard from them whatsoever. And I like the people, I didn't want them to go anywhere, they take care of the place. So keep the lines of communication open with your landlord all the time. If there is a problem, talk to him about it. Send him an email about it. Always keep it in writing. If he's slow in making repairs, still, if it's not only a problem on your part, if you ask him to make a repair and 3 months later he's like, oh yeah, I'm going to get to that, talk to him about it. You don't need to be nasty or anything, but just say, hey, you know what, I've been waiting 3 months. I'd really like you to fix whatever it is, I pay my rent on time. I'd really like you to reciprocate and help me out, Keep that line of communication open. Same thing. If you have a problem with, paying your rent late, always better just to call them and say, hey, you know what, I'm having a problem. I had car trouble. I had to pay, the mechanic. I had to help somebody out. I had to do this. I didn't get my check. My hours got cut. Whatever it is, just be open with them. Call them. Keep those lines of communications open. Because chances are, he wants you to stay. He doesn't want you to leave either. So if you call him and say, hey, I'm having some trouble, he's probably going to try and work something out with you and appreciate the fact that you called him instead of just not hearing from him and wondering what's going on. So always to keep those lines of communications open. Talk to your landlord. Number 7 is purchase renter's insurance. How many of you are renters now? How many of you pay rent and are you renters now? Do you have renter's insurance? You can get renter's insurance for like $8 a month. It's really, really cheap. And what that does is it protects your stuff. Because your landlord, if let's say, let's say there's a fire in your apartment complex or your house burns and some of your stuff is lost in that fire, his insurance policy, he doesn't pay for your stuff. It pays for his stuff, his building, the reconstruction. It pays for his property. It doesn't include your property. So it's really a really smart thing, because it is so cheap, to get a renter's policy of insurance, which just covers your stuff, covers your furniture, you know, your TV. Yeah.
Is that a separate? Does it usually come with the apartments, or?
No, that's something that you're gonna have to get yourself. Yeah, and you just contact whoever you have your car insurance with, or you know, if you need names of people, call me. I'll give you guys one of my cards at the end of the day. And you know, if you need an insurance guy, talk to your caseworker, call me, whatever. State Farm has a really good renter's insurance policy. Seriously, it costs you like, you know, $5, $6, $8, $10 a month. And it's just like car insurance. You hate to pay it, you know, because chances are you're not going to wreck your car, but you're going to be really happy when you do wreck your car that you were paying that, you know, that premium. So it's the same thing. If you have a fire, if there's plumbing issues, if you have a flood, any damage to your property inside your apartment or house at all, that renter's insurance will cover it, and it's really cheap. The next tip is to protect your security deposit. You protect your security deposit. Again, avoid misunderstandings. Make sure your lease or your rental agreement is really clear on what that deposit is used for, if it is used, and you know what are allowable deductions and that kind of stuff. When you move in, don't wait until something happens and then you're trying to get your deposit back. Always do a walkthrough before you move in with your landlord to record existing damage. There's a sheet. It's called a move-in, move-out sheet. Everybody use it. You guys that have moved into apartments, I'm sure you've seen it. It lists every room, everything in every room. You know, there was a hole in the carpet. There was a, you know, smudge on the wall, or whatever, you know, whatever it is. It's all documented there. And in your lease agreement too, it'll tell you, it'll stipulate when you move out. There's a section in your lease agreement for when you move out, and what your responsibilities are, and what the landlord can do, what he could deduct for, and that kind of stuff from your security deposit. So make sure you know what that is. And the most important thing is, you know, it's your responsibility to keep the place the way it was when you get it. So that's the best way to protect your security deposit, is to take care of your place, and you know, keep it up. If you're fooling around, you put a hole in the wall, fix it. You know, don't just leave it there and think, you know, because I'll guarantee you, your landlord's going to charge you more to fix it than it would cost you to do it yourself, or have a buddy do it, or call a contractor even. You know, he's going to charge you a whole lot more. So if you keep it, you know, if you fulfill your obligation, you keep it the way that it was when you got it, then you're going to get your deposit back when you leave, bottom line. Next thing is to protect your safety. Learn whether, you know, the building and the neighborhood are safe, what you can expect your landlord to do if they're not safe. You know, what's the landlord going to do? You know, check around, find out, you know, whether the place is vulnerable to, you know, break-ins, whether they've had a lot of problems with that kind of stuff. Find out, if you can, whether there have been any criminal incidents there, you know, in the past, or property around there. Just, you know, crime is going to happen. It's likely to happen everywhere. So you might as well, you know, make sure what your situation is, and if you're not comfortable with it, keep looking. Don't move into a place if you find out that, you know, every other week, you know, somebody's getting broken into and losing their stuff, that kind of stuff. And then the last tip on this, in this section, is to deal with an eviction properly. Know your rights, know when you should fight an eviction and when you should just pack up and move. If you feel like the landlord is clearly in the wrong, if you haven't received proper notices, if the premises, if he's haven't given you a habitable premises, if there are things that he hasn't taken care of, you might want to fight the eviction. But unless you have the law and provable facts on your side, you're not going to win.
If you, let's say I'm renting a house, I'm in there for like 4 months, it's a year agreement, and it's not habitable, and I want to move, would I have to pay like the deduction or whatever it is to buy out the rest of the year?
If it's not habitable,
okay.
No, you shouldn't have to.
Okay.
Yeah, you shouldn't have to at all. And again, see, that's when it goes back to putting everything in writing.
Right.
Because, hopefully you've done that,
mm-hmm.
and you've got all those, notices to your landlord, fix this, fix this, fix this, fix this, and he hasn't done it,
Right.
So, if that's the case, you don't, if that's the case, you don't have to. You can just, tell him, listen, I can't live here because you did this. He's going to say, well, you have a lease. Well, then you can tell him all the things that he hasn't fulfilled in that lease.
Right.
Which is to give you a place that
Cool.
you can live in. Yeah. So that's it. Good. That's a good question and a good example. I mean, there are times when, you are in the right and you do need to, to take that action. But listen, if you don't pay your rent, don't expect to live there for free. That's the bottom line.
And then if you like bug your landlord to keep come and fix the hole in the wall or whatever it is,
Yeah.
and then they keep pushing it off, they can't like evict you, like I don't know, they can't like kick you out for bugging them, right? Or
No.
nothing like that.
No, as long as you pay your rent,
because my landlord's kind of a sour.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he can't, just because you're asking him to make repairs. Yeah, he can't. The only reason he can, there again, it all goes back to whatever lease agreement, or whatever rental agreement you sign with him. It says in there very clearly what he can kick you out for.
Right.
And I'm pretty sure it's not going to be for asking him to fix things that are wrong.
Yeah.
It's just not. But he might say it is. He might say, hey, you complain too much. You got to leave. Well, show me in the lease agreement. Show me in my rental agreement where you can kick me out if I ask you to fix things.
Okay.
Yeah. And you guys know about GBLA, Greater Bakersfield Legal Assistance. Really good source. If you ever got an eviction notice, let's say, or got threatened of one by your landlord concerning what you were just asking about,
Mm-hmm.
You can go to them and they'll give you legal assistance. A lot of times they'll help you out for free and help give you guidance as to how to handle a situation or whatever. So yeah, just talk to your caseworker about that too. So any other questions about the stuff we talked about so far? No? Good information? Yeah? Okay. All right. I got a few more tips for you, and these are the tips on how to help you maybe possibly get into a rental situation or rent if your credit isn't the best. Anybody know what their credit score is? Yeah. Anybody say it's not so great? Yeah, it happens. Tell you, it wasn't that long ago I made some bad business decisions, and even mine wasn't that great. Really not good. Yeah, but you just got to keep working on it. So here's a few things you can do. Find a co-signer. Find a guarantor is what it's called. Someone that has good credit, that will sign with you and basically guarantee. Now you're not asking that person to pay your rent, but what you're saying is that person comes alongside of you and saying, hey, I know this guy, I know this girl, and they're responsible and they're going to pay their rent, and I believe it so much that I'm going to put my credit worthiness on the line to help them out. that makes a big deal. It makes a big difference when you're talking about making an application, is to have somebody else that is willing to do that for you. Another thing that you can do is when you've got such a not great credit score, is to be honest and show progress. Some bad credit isn't always a reflection of bad money management. It could be that you've lost your job. It could be that you suffered medical problems and had big medical bills. Medical bills, they'll take your credit score down like a burning airplane. I mean, it's not good. Well, or there might be other financial setbacks that you've experienced that were out of your control. So it doesn't always mean that you're a bad money manager. But if that's the case, you just need to be up front and before the landlord even runs your credit check. And this happens to me quite often. People will tell me, hey, my credit score is crap. My credit score is bad, but here's why. And if you can do that and you can provide documentation to back up your story, to back up and say, here's what happened, here's my hospital bills, here's my payment arrangement agreement with the hospital, I pay this much and this is why, that's why my credit score is bad. They're going to run your credit score and they're going to see on their hospital, whatever. So, as long as your stories correspond with what's on there, you might be able to get ahead of the game. Just be honest and show progress and show them, hey, here's what happened, here's what I've done to take care of it, and that type of stuff. Another thing that you can do is, if you're in a situation and you don't have any other alternatives, is to save up some money and offer to pay your rent in advance. You go to a landlord and say, hey, I know my credit score is only 560 or 590 or whatever, and you require a 600, but I'm willing to pay you 2 months rent in advance. So you always are 1 month ahead. That might sway him to get him over to that side. Or, offer to increase your security deposit. Say, you know what, you want a $600 security deposit, I'll give you $850, just in good faith, because I know you're making a consideration on my credit score, that type of thing. Another thing you can do, kind of goes along with the first one, is getting a cosigner, is to get a roommate. Somebody that's willing to share your expenses with you. The landlord will allow just one person to sign the lease. See if your roommate is willing to sign it solo without you. That way he's not going to see your bad credit score. If your roommate has a better one, your roommate again is going to know that you're going to split the expenses with them or whatever. A lot of times too, you can get a much nicer place, if you get a roommate, like let's say, say your budget is $500 for rent. Well, there's not really a lot you can rent for $500. It's very nice, but there's a lot of $1,500 per month 3-bedroom houses out there available. So you get 2 other people that wouldn't mind, living in a house with you. Your expenses is the same. It's still $500 each for you a month. You're splitting the utilities. You're splitting the cable or whatever, everything else. So your expenses are going to be lower, and you're living in a nice neighborhood in a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house rather than a little 1-bedroom apartment over on Q Street or something. Did you hear about the shooting that just happened over there?
Yeah, I live right
38th
in front
Street?
of those. Yeah.
When was
It was
this,
so
yesterday?
sad.
Like 2 days ago or something? Was
You
it
talking
2?
about with the couple and the baby in the middle?
Oh, no. This just happened like 2 nights
no.
ago.
I didn't know about that one.
It was a guy that had just moved here like 4 months ago from San Diego, and was an apartment on 38th Street, I think, somewhere down there.
Yeah.
And he was just out in the parking lot, and some 4 guys in a car drove by, and it was just a random deal. Killed him. And he moved up here to try and better himself, getting out of an environment that he was in San Diego, when he knew he shouldn't be in, he moved up here, got a job, got an apartment, standing out in the parking lot, and got killed.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mean, that you don't want that to happen. I mean, and if by getting a couple of your friends to go in on a house, you know, and live in a nice neighborhood rather than, you know, paying $500 for a little 1-bedroom or a little studio apartment somewhere. Yeah, I think it's a great idea. Actually, Randy and I have talked about trying to come up with some of those kind of scenarios for you know, you guys, where you might have a house that's really nice that get 3 of you and put 3 of you in a house instead of, you know, kind of along those same lines. So it's always a good option. Another thing you can do is if you're looking at your bad credit score and wondering what you can do about it, is you know, if you've got a good job now and you're trying to catch up and make your credit score better, you know, that's a strength that you can use when you're making an application for, you know, to rent. If you show your check stub and say, listen, this is what I make, you know, I can afford the rent regardless of what my credit score says. Even sometimes with technology now, you can even offer to pay via direct deposit, you know. So tell them, I'll arrange to where, you know, my rent will be in your bank account on the 1st of every month. No questions asked, every month, automatic withdrawal, you know, that might help along those lines. Yeah, and another thing that you can do along those same lines is to compromise by paying a little more. Some landlords charge additional risk fees, you know, depending upon, you know, your credit score that's worse or whatever. But if you really love an apartment and you know it might be kind of iffy because of your credit score or whatever, say, you know, offer them a little more. Say, you know what, I really love this place. I know you're making you know, you're gonna have to consider this because of my credit score, but I'd be willing to pay you $10 a month more, $25 a month more. You know, you only want to do that if you really love the place. You wouldn't do that if it's, you know, not the greatest thing. But and you're probably gonna have better luck with that if you're dealing with an individual property manager who's inclined to make those decisions, you know, individually, rather than a bigger company. Sometimes you can negotiate a slightly higher rent as a gesture of good faith. You know, hey, I like the place. I know I've got some, you know, issues, but the other thing you might want to try, and this is the last one, then we'll just open it up for questions, is bring recommendations. You know, when you're submitting your application, when you're submitting your documentation, get letters of recommendations. Get a letter from your boss, you know, just like you would for a job application. You know, get a letter from your pastor or your social worker or whatever, you know, whoever you know would be willing to give you a letter of recommendation. Just include that in that rental application package, and you never know. Previous employers, previous landlords, past roommates, anybody that can vouch for your character. You know, anybody who knows you to be a good person and who'd be willing to write a letter saying so. Yeah. So that's just some of the things you can do to combat maybe not having the best credit score. Anyway, you guys know you can find out what your credit score is for free, right? Annualcreditreport.com. You just go to that website.
Is it better than Credit Karma?
Same thing. Credit Karma is just about the same, yeah. But either one of those, you can get it for free, and it's not gonna ding. It's not gonna give you, because you know, if you go to rental place and they run your credit, or if you go to the car place, you're looking at cars and they run your credit. Every time somebody runs your credit report, it knocks your credit score down. So don't do that.
Why is that?
Well, because you're showing activity that might lead you to incur additional expenses. So, you know,
But since you don't, it's usually just like a check. Like
Yeah.
you're checking a lot of times.
right, yeah,
You know, you're going to different, you're looking for a car, you're going to different dealers. I mean,
Yeah.
they're each running your credit.
Right.
So it's like,
yeah. But you know, if you go into those dealers and you tell them, hey, I just want the information. I don't want you to run my credit.
okay.
You know, that way they're going to get, they want to make the deal. So they're going to do whatever they have to do to get you to do it without running your credit. Yeah, because that's a bad thing. And I know, I've done it myself. You go car shopping, you end up in 3 or 4 different places, and then you find out that they all ran your credit, and you know, your score dropped 20 points or whatever, you know? Yeah, it happens. Yeah. So anybody have any questions? Anybody? Any questions about anything?
Do you have a list for if you were wanting to buy a house? This is for renting, right?
Yeah, this was basically for renting,
But
but
if you
yeah,
wanted to like buy a house,
That's
I'm
what I
assuming
do.
It's a whole different.
yeah, that's what I do. I'll give you my card, and if
Yeah.
that's what you want to do, we can
How
get
does that
together.
work with having no credit?
Well, it doesn't.
So basically you have to build it.
Yeah, that's what you have to do is you have to build your credit. Before you're able to get a mortgage to buy a home, you have to establish a good credit report. But that's the other thing. We can talk about that a little bit. I mean,
Is it like when you get a house, when you want to buy a house, the better your credit score, the cheaper your mortgage is gonna be? Or
Yeah.
That's
the better interest rate you can get. Yeah, and the
What
better
does your credit have to
terms.
be if you want to buy a house?
FHA, which is you know a loan program that is guaranteed by the Federal Housing Administration, so it's like a nationwide program. Only requires a 620.
Oh, really?
So
Yeah.
what if you have higher than that, but
Yeah.
like your husband doesn't? Does that matter?
Only if you need his income to buy the house. What is his like close to that or?
Well, he has like pretty much no credit, but my
Yeah.
credit's pretty good.
Yeah. What I would probably do in that case is talk to me afterwards, and I'll give you my card. You can call me, or we can talk later, and I'll hook you up with a lender, a mortgage lender, and you can ask him those questions, and he can see, you know, if there's a way, depending upon what your husband's situation is. If he has a good income and stable I mean, that's what you need. You need, you know, a decent credit score, and you need good, documentable, stable income. Those are the things that you need to qualify for a mortgage. Yeah. And then everything else is just whatever your income is. You know, they have ratios that they use, so whatever your income is, then they'll tell you how much house you can buy, you know. Yeah, but I'll give you my card. Yeah, and I'll give you a couple names and numbers and maybe talk to them and then put them in contact with you. So, and same thing with you if you're interested in that. Yeah, for sure.
What about the first time buyers program?
There are first time buyers programs. Some of them. There's some that actually will grant you the down payment, and as long as you keep that home for 5 years, you don't have to repay it. They all have stipulations though. A lot of them are you can't make too much money. They have income limits. So, you know, if you can only make up to a certain amount to be able to take advantage of those programs, but they're definitely out there. Yeah, and if you fit in that criteria, which is usually kind of narrow, but if you fit in there, and it's a no-brainer because it's, you know, you can get like several $1,000s, and as long as you keep the house for more than 5 years, you know, they just write it off. You know, it becomes a grant instead of a loan, and you don't have to repay it. So yeah.
if you if you start renting houses here and there,
Uh-huh.
does that help you if you want to buy a house, or it doesn't even matter?
Yeah, I mean, as long as you have a good rental history,
Right.
because that's one thing that when you go to apply for a mortgage, that's one thing they're going to check.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, they're going to check your rental, you know, your rental record or your rental history. Yeah.
How much how much more difficult, I should say, is it to get into having a mortgage for a home as opposed to an apartment, renting for an apartment?
It is more difficult, there's more hoops to jump through, but, you know, it's funny because the criteria is basically the same. I mean, to get an apartment, you have to have, you know, a decent credit score or explanations why it's not. To get a mortgage, you have to have a decent credit score or explanations why it's not. You know, medical is one thing when you're applying for a mortgage. If you have medical bills, they don't count against you. Same thing. You have to, you know, to rent an apartment, you have to show stable employment and, you know, and enough income to pay the rent. Same thing in a mortgage. You have to show stable employment, usually 2 years, and then, you know, your income is what dictates, you know, the size and price of a house that you can buy. So I would say the biggest difference is going to be your credit score. I mean, if you have, if you have job stability, if you've been on your job for 2 years or more, and your credit score is 620 or so, then yeah, talk to me.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Anybody else? Any other questions? Going once?
So you said to have the job for 2 years. Is
Uh-huh.
it the same job or in the same field?
Good question. Same field. As long as say, what do you do? Oil field. So as long as every time you make a change, you're bettering yourself. You're getting more money. You're getting more hours, and that's documented through your pay stubs and all that. As long as you're in the same industry or in the same field and you're bettering yourself, then all they need is 2 years total. Yeah, 2 years total. But if you go from working in the oil fields to, you know, selling cars, even though you might be making more money, it's not
They
gonna
want
work.
us to
Yeah, they have to be in the same field. Yeah, it lessens their, you know, their exposure. You know, their
Right, for
risk.
you switching jobs.
Their
and-
risk, yeah.
What about if like I do sales, I'm a salesman, you know.
Uh-huh.
I moved from, you know, doing like student loan sales
Uh-huh.
to gym sales, like gym membership sales, back to student loans. That's right.
Sales is sales.
Sales. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, sales is sales. Yeah, for sure.
Cool.
Anybody else? Okay, I'll just put some cards out here. This number on the front is the best way to get a hold of me. That's my private line. It rings right at my desk. So if you guys want to just take a card, if you have any other questions, if you want to, you know, what was your name?
Lydia?
Lydia, yeah. Give Lydia one if you want to, you know, give me a call. I can talk to you in a little more detail without, you know, 10 other people sitting around and, you know, find out whether you might just want to move forward with that, or I'll put you in contact with a mortgage lender and he can answer more specific questions about your husband's employment and, you know, what you know, his credit looks like and that kind of stuff. Yeah, for sure. And same thing, what was your name? Giovanni? Okay, yeah, same thing. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, guys. Thank you guys for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good questions. I like the questions.
Sure.